Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I went live a little early, but it's okay. They're just going to keep repeating themselves. So whatever anybody misses, they'll get again. I didn't know that they were going to end so soon on the stream and move to a next witness. So I thought I timed it right. I didn't. That's fine. It's fine. Let's get going on OJ. Oh, I didn't share my screen. You can't see OJ. Only I can. And I can't because it's Judgito right now, but same difference. Tomorrow, no, the next day we'll be on video 150. That's crazy.
All right, the record should reflect that each of the jurors has taken the opportunity to compare People's 57 Defense 1011 with the still frame video that is now on the screen. Ms. Clark, I would suggest we print this out.
Thank you, Your Honor. Then at the time that you see the officer on the walkway as depicted in the photographs and in the video from which the photographs were taken, the crime scene tape, is it up or down?
It's down.
And what is the significance of that, sir?
No,
What does that mean?
that the crime scene investigation at that time has been concluded.
And what does that mean with respect to whether it was appropriate or not for the officer to be on that walkway walking in the manner you see him in the video and on that still?
It would be appropriate for him to do that.
Can you tell us, sir, in the course of your investigation in this case, approximately how many witnesses have been interviewed?
I'm aware of, I believe, 170 formal interviews that are written. There are several other interviews that are taped. There's in excess of 440 clues, I believe, with numerous interviews associated with each one.
Each of those clues has been investigated, sir?
That's correct.
Total.
And were all of those clues with respect to, were all clues followed up?
We get clues in almost on a daily basis, and it's an ongoing process. But they are all being followed up or have been.
And did you follow up clues that, excuse me, strike that. May I have a moment? And has the investigation of this case, the investigation of this case stopped, sir?
No, it's ongoing.
Is that unusual?
No, not at all.
Can you explain that, please?
In most of my cases, we get information all the time from different sources. Certainly in this case, due to the great amount of publicity, we're getting information on a daily basis and attempting to follow up on all of it.
Well, sir, but in your other cases, has your investigation stopped at the moment of trial?
You need more OJ than 1 to 2 hours almost every single day? That's not enough for you? You need more? The link to this is in every video, so you can go ahead. You can watch it all.
No.
For how long? For how long does your investigation continue in your other cases, not just this one?
Continues right into trial and right through trial.
Is that a typical thing?
Yes, it is.
And you continue to follow up all leads in all cases that you investigate, that you handle?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have here the printout still from the videotape marked People's 101 as it is be 101A?
All right, 101A.
This poor guy feels like he's been on the
In that
stand.
respect, sir, is
here.
this case any different than the other cases you've handled?
Oh, just as to the volume of information coming in.
Mr. Cochran?
I just think it would be more helpful if the lawyers would have. It's like all this bull that they keep talking about. If the lawyers would have made a timeline, of what happened that night and what they know, but it's just so much other stuff that it's why I don't understand why they just didn't show the evidence of the murder and go with that. Okay, the dog barking. Let's just go with the ice cream. Even if, okay, the police did not take a picture of this ice cream to know when it was put there. And they spent, I don't know how long in testimony on this ice cream. And they keep going back to the ice cream. Like, okay, fine. The police didn't take a picture of the ice cream. You could have made that point in a question. And you could have emphasized it in a question. That doesn't move me to believe that the police are all corrupt and did a horrible job because they didn't take a picture of this ice cream. I mean, it's not that big of a deal to be spending weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on it.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Detective Lang.
Morning, sir.
Prior to your undergoing redirect examination, you had a number of conversations with Ms. Clark, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Regarding your testimony and the questions she would ask you?
Yes.
And you discussed and went over the content of the questions and answers that we posed to you, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So that you knew what questions she was going to ask, and in fact, that you rehearsed what you were going to be testifying about, isn't that correct? Well,
Rephrase question.
well, you discussed what you were going to be talking about here in court yesterday and today, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And in the course of that, when did you do that? When did you have that conversation?
I believe there were more than one conversation.
I will start at the first one. Let's take when the first one was that you had this conversation with Ms. Clark, preparing you for your redirect examination.
For redirect?
Yes.
I don't recall. Perhaps last week.
Last week, while we're off on this case, that you had occasion to talk to Ms. Clark during that time frame?
I believe it was last week.
Well, counsel, we weren't off from this case just
Well,
last week.
When we were off, the jury wasn't here.
When the jury
All right. That's right. I put it, we were working. Yes, Your Honor. So stipulated. When the jury was not here with us last week, you had occasion to talk to Ms. Clark about your upcoming testimony. Is that correct?
Yes.
And where did that first conversation take place?
I believe it was here in the building.
And was anybody else present during that conversation?
I don't believe so.
Now, just the two of you were talking?
Well, there are people that are constantly moving in and out of her office.
Well, the primary conversation was between you and she. Is that correct, sir?
Well, there were one or two conversations that I recall that we had in regards to redirect. It's primarily the two of us, yes.
All right. And that took place, as best you can recall, last week up in Ms. Clark's office. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, I believe so.
All right. What date was the first conversation?
I don't know.
What date was the second conversation?
I don't recall what date. It was someday last week.
One day last week.
I believe it was last week.
And did you talk about your testimony yesterday before you took the stand for redirect examination?
I don't believe so.
Did you talk about it today, this morning, before we started on this part of the case?
There was some conversation, yes.
And that again was between you and Ms. Clark. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with regard to this video that we just saw, I want to have that video replay if I can, Your Honor.
All
I have
right,
that replay.
People's 101.
Yes. You have shared before it's was being put up. You shared with us that the best of your recollections, the scene was broken down on June 13th, perhaps at about 3:45 in the afternoon. Is that correct?
Approximately, yes.
So as we know, police officers were free to walk in and out at that point. Hold on, please. Police officers were free to walk in and out of the scene at that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we also know that, according to your testimony, there were some alleged blood spots on the rear gate of this premises. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And no photographs were taken of those blood spots on June 13th. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And nobody even bothered to come back, and you didn't go back and even check until July 3rd, some 3 weeks later. Isn't that right?
The rear gate area,
Yes.
that's correct.
And that scene had been broken down all that time. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's no way they should be allowed to use those blood drops as evidence of a crime. Good. You made your point. Move on.
In fact, you came back on at least 2 or 3 occasions between June 13th and July 3rd, and you never went back to the rear. Is that correct? Understood.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, let us see that video if we can.
Poltergeist.
Ms. Clark show you this video last week when you were meeting and talking about your redirect examination?
I don't believe I've ever seen this video.
It's very dark. Let me back it up, Your Honor. Can you back up for you? All right. Now let's stop it there. That white blanket or sheet, was that a blanket or sheet that had been placed over Miss Nicole Simpson's body?
That appears to be, yes.
And when you arrived at the scene, after you got the call and you from robbery homicide took over this case, you first arrived there, was the blood in and around Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's body still wet?
There were parts that I would term around here on the pavement sticky.
All right. And that blanket or sheet there was placed over her body at some point?
Yes.
And do you see the red portions on that blanket or sheet, which is white,
Yes.
that appear to you to be blood?
Yes.
And that blanket or sheet had been on top of her body at some point?
Earlier in the day, yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you never saved that blanket or sheet, did you?
No.
Do you know whether or not there's trace evidence on that blanket or sheet?
Trace evidence?
Trace evidence from her body.
I would have no way of knowing what was on that blanket.
And you never saved it. Was it ultimately thrown away?
I believe so.
Now, you're not a criminalist, are you?
That's correct.
You're not a doctor, are you?
No.
All right, let's continue on with the video. When's the last time you saw this sheet with the blood there on, or blanket?
Morning of the 13th.
And you know whatever happened to it?
No, I don't.
Did you ever come back to the scene on June 13th after you left about 12 noon?
I don't believe I returned that day.
All right, so if this video took place at 3:45 or thereabouts, you weren't even there, were you, at that point?
I don't know what time the video took place.
Well, you just told us that the scene was broken down at 3:45, So I
Correct.
presume that the first part of the video started at 3:45. Is that a
Well,
fair statement?
This particular appears to me to be a cutaway, so I don't know exactly what time. The log indicates it was broken at 3:45.
All right. Well, when Ms.
This is
Clark,
obviously sometime after that.
all right, but we saw an officer with taking the yellow tape down. You recall that?
That's correct.
All right. So you have any problem with that having been close to 3:45?
Again, approximately 3:45.
And you never saw any of this, did you? What's depicted in the video?
I wasn't there.
All right. Now, with regard to officers and their feet and blood, I want to show you a photograph. Let me step down. Put this in. Person, Commissioner, step down here.
Yes.
Sir. With regard to, and Your Honor, for the record, we're looking at, I think it's 54, and this is 54-2. 54-2 photograph. I want you to look at 54-2 here and make sure all the jurors can see it. You see this red substance kind of in the grout ways there of the tile there? You see that?
Yes.
And you see this shoe? I think it's a black shoe, appears to be a black man's shoe.
Yes, it is.
And similar to the shoe you have on there, isn't it?
Certainly is.
And we won't, well, have any photographs of those shoes, but that looks like that shoe, does it not?
It appears to be the same type of shoe, yes.
All right. And do you see where that, it appears to be a right shoe, doesn't it? You see, it appears to be a right shoe, does it not?
I can't tell from that angle.
Architect, if you keep your voice up.
I can't tell from the angle,
All right. You-
left or right.
Okay, you can't tell if it's a right or left shoe?
No.
It's one of the shoes, is it not? It's right or left, isn't it?
Yes.
And judging from where that is, if that was a left shoe, where would the person be standing?
Probably off to the right here,
All
to
right.
the gate.
All right. But
Or they could be standing at an angle to the side.
all right. You can't tell us that, can you?
No,
All right. But you can tell us that that shoe is standing right on top of the blood there in that grouting. You see that?
no, it appears to me that it could either be up on the toe or perhaps the arch.
You're telling what? You're telling this jury that this shoe, this particular shoe, the person is on his arch?
I'm not telling you, I'm saying I don't know.
All right. Well,
It could be on the toe or it could be over the arch from that angle. To me, it's a little hard to tell.
all right. Well, I understand the jury has to make a final decision, but look at that photograph, sir. Take a moment and look
I
at it.
have.
All right. Does that look as though the front of that shoe, the every portion you can see on that shoe, is flat against the tile, sir? Isn't that correct?
I can't tell,
You can't tell that?
not from that angle.
Would you agree that there's blood underneath where that shoe is?
It appears to be blood in the grouting underneath the shoe, but as far as the shoe goes, whether it's underneath the arch or that person is up on their toe, I don't know.
Well, when you walked around the scene, did you walk around on your tippy toes that day?
At times where I was on my toes, that's exactly correct.
And is this you here?
It
Is
may
that your
well
shoe?
be,
All right.
and I had no blood on my shoes.
All right. But with regard to this particular shoe, you can't tell whether that's you or Furman, can you?
No.
Or any other detective, can you?
I don't know who it is.
And you agree with me, the picture, this photograph will speak for itself. Is that correct?
Well, objection, that's hard to get it.
Sustain.
Well,
Pause.
all right, Joe. At any rate, so that we're clear, looking at 54-2, you cannot tell us whether or not that's your shoe. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And you will agree, however, that the shoe is on the grouting, and under that grouting, there's blood. Is that correct?
No,
There's not.
I cannot agree with you that the shoe is on the grouting if that particular person is up on their front toes or if the grouting is beneath the archway of the shoe. Can't tell you.
All right.
I can't tell from that angle.
But there is blood on the grouting. Is that correct?
It appears to be, that's correct.
That appears to be. Can
It
you look at that
appears
again?
to be blood, that's correct.
All right. And you were out there that morning. You know there was blood in the grouting, don't you?
That's correct.
All right. Yeah, and I'd like to move this photograph down to the other end so the other jurors can see it also.
Certainly. Mr. Douglas, you want to help us? Photographers are directed not to attempt to photograph this exhibit.
Come on, Judge. Debbie, I want to see it.
Mr. Douglas, could you turn the board around, please? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
That photograph we were just referring to, number 54-2, was that taken at Mark Furman's direction, if you know?
I don't know.
Was that photograph taken at your direction?
Very possibly.
What do you recall?
That specific photograph, no.
You don't recall who directed that photograph to be taken?
Again, I do not recall who directed that specific photograph to be taken.
Do you know whether or not you were at the scene when that photograph was taken?
I can't say whether I was or not.
All right. Now, Detective Lang, with regard to the tennis shoes, and you recall the video where you were shown carrying the tennis shoes under your arms. Remember that?
Yes.
And were you trained to do that in the academy in case there's trace evidence on an item such as that to carry it under your arms like that?
I don't really understand that question.
Okay, let me see if I can ask it another way. When we saw you in the video carrying the tennis shoes under your arm, do you recall that?
Yes.
All right, would you like to see it again? Is that a fresh recollection?
I recall the video. I don't need to see it again.
All right. And the way you were carrying the tennis shoes in the video, were you seeking at that time to protect trace evidence, which may or may not have been on those particular shoes?
Trace evidence may or may not have been a consideration. The reason that I obtained those shoes was to have red stains checked for the possibility of blood and to obtain a shoe size.
We understand that, and we know it was negative for blood, right?
Isn't him checking for blood trace evidence?
That's correct.
All right. The question was about trace evidence, sir. And
Trace evidence, sir, was not foremost on my mind.
All right, well, I understand that, but you're the investigator, and I understand it may have been foremost on your mind. But if there were trace evidence on those particular tennis shoes, wouldn't that be valuable evidence either to exonerate or to inculpate Mr. Simpson? Isn't that correct?
I think that's argumentative, but it's possible. And
Well,
maybe not. I really couldn't say.
Since nobody's objecting, why don't you just try to answer it? Question.
That's my answer.
All right. That you don't think the trace evidence would have been relevant in this instance?
No, I said it could be, and maybe it couldn't be.
In the course of your discussions with Miss Clark, did she tell you that you need to be more aggressive in your answers at some point? Because I was making points in cross-examination. Did she tell you that?
Aggressive?
Yes. Be more aggressive in your
I
responses.
don't recall her instructing me to be more aggressive.
What word did she use?
I don't recall any word that she used.
Did Mr. Darden use the word be more aggressive?
I don't recall Mr. Darden telling me to be more aggressive.
All right. At any rate, you weren't concerned about trace evidence as you carried these tennis shoes under your arms. Is that correct?
Trace evidence was not foremost in my mind under those circumstances.
The question was, sir, please answer the question. Were you concerned about trace evidence when you carried those tennis shoes under your arm?
Oh, well, trace evidence was not foremost in my mind at that time.
That's not my question. The question was, were you concerned about trace evidence?
It was not foremost in my mind.
Well, if there were blood on those tennis shoes and you carried it under your arms, wasn't there a chance you might wipe that blood off?
Not from the stains that I observed. They were on the top of the shoe, on the side of the shoe. They appeared to be dry. Those shoes had been sitting in that closet on the floor. They'd been in other places other than the crime scene. Trace evidence, because of that reason, was not foremost in my mind.
All right, well, let's look at the video.
Obtained those shoes to obtain a shoe size and to check for the presence of blood.
You've told us that, and we know it was negative for blood. Can we see the video? I want to ask some questions about it.
Yeah, Mr. Cochran, which defense exhibit is this?
Let me check. 1049, I'm advised, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Spies. There's spies on both sides, I bet.
Now, stop it there. You see how you're carrying the tennis shoes at that point?
Yes,
And at that point, I know trace evidence wasn't uppermost in your mind because you have the shoes against your body there, don't you?
they're against my arm, yes.
Yes. And is that a way that you, as an experienced investigator of over 20 years, learned to carry evidence?
That's one way of carrying evidence, yes.
And that's you learned to carry it that way, did you, at the academy?
There's no one way to learn to carry evidence.
All right. But certainly you carried it on this way on this date. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Continue on.
Hold on.
Print that out, Jim.
Do you want to print that
Yes.
out because the,
Yes, it's part of 1049, and we'll
Yes.
perhaps make this 1049A.
yes,
Print that out. Thank you. Is that your clipboard that you have those shoes on?
Yes,
That's not a box, is it?
Me and CJ are discussing OJ while we're watching OJ.
boxes in the trunk.
It's not a box, is it?
That's a clipboard.
All right. I thought so. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Now, I think we already established that those tennis shoes were then taken by you to the lab the next morning on June 14th, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you've testified that you saw criminalist Fung at the Rockingham location sometime after 5:20 on the afternoon of June 13th. Is that correct?
I don't recall the time.
Well, what time do you think it was?
I believe I arrived approximately at that time. I don't recall what time I might have seen him.
Sometime after 5:20. Would that be a fair statement?
I can't say.
Well, you saw him after you got there, didn't you?
I believe I did.
All right. And at that time, did it ever occur to you at any time before you left to get in your car to go home to give those tennis shoes to Mr. Fung, since ultimately they had to go to the lab anyway?
I believe Mr. Fung had left by the time that I retrieved those tennis shoes.
The question was, did it ever occur to you to give those tennis shoes to Mr. Fung? That's the
No.
question.
If he's not there, I couldn't have given to him. So no, I wouldn't have.
The fact that you could have recovered the shoes and stayed around, he may have been there earlier. So I'm not arguing with you. I'm just asking, did it ever occur to you to give those tennis shoes to Mr. Fung, or for that matter, any other criminalist who may have been at that scene?
Mr. Fung was not there when the shoes were recovered, so it certainly did not occur to me.
What time were the shoes recovered?
I believe it was sometime after 6 or 6:15.
Do you have a record that indicates that?
The time of recovery?
Of recovery of those shoes? Can you look in your
No.
notes and tell us that?
No.
You're speaking from your own independent recollection?
Speaking from my recollection, and I don't recall seeing Mr. Fung at that location at that time that I came down and left.
Do you know what time Mr. Fung left that evening?
No,
Have you seen a log which would indicate what time he left?
no.
Do you have such a log?
Do I have a
Yes,
log?
as to what he left.
I don't believe I do.
In your books there, do you have the criminalist log, which would indicate what time Fung left on June 13th from the Rockingham location?
I don't have a criminalist log.
All right. Do you have a log which indicates what time you left?
I don't know if there was a log that was taken at that time or not.
Well, good morning, American courts. Guys, we have a we have a celebrity in the house.
Can you take a look? Can you take a look for us and tell us whether you have that?
Yes, it's right in front of me.
First of all, does that log indicate what time you recovered these tennis shoes?
No, it wouldn't indicate a time of recovery.
All right.
May I see counsel at the sidebar without the report, please?
So
No, you may not. Judge, you need to, okay, from now on, if you want a sidebar, you have to run it by me first. Because obviously you can't control this courtroom. Yeah, he did a crappy job of collecting evidence. We got it. We understand. Oh, he's done, I think. Looks like Marsha's up now. She can ask the same questions over and over.
Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
the log before you, what time does that show that you arrived back at the location of Rockingham? It's 17:15?
Shows that I arrived at 5:15, yes.
All right, 5:15. And as far as you know, Fung was still there at least until 5:20. Isn't that correct?
I don't recall.
When you, sorry, dear. Use your microphone.
I was wrong.
I don't recall.
Did you ever see Van Adder give criminalist Fung Mr. Simpson's blood that was contained in a vial that
I bet it was the court reporter. She looks like she would love flower arrangements.
had been taken downtown here at Parker Center, out at Rockingham at about 5:20 or thereabouts on the evening of June 13th, 1994?
I didn't actually see him do that, no.
You never saw it? You weren't present when that happened, or if it happened?
I don't recall seeing it. I don't recall seeing it happen visually.
All right. So at any rate, what time does it show you leaving the Rockingham scene?
At 7:10 p.m.
All right. And that refreshes your recollection. That's about the time that you left.
Yes.
And at that time, you don't know, or do you know whether or not Fung had already left at that point?
No, I don't recall seeing him.
All right.
I was thinking Judge Boyd got
Did
her
you
right.
talk to Mr. Fung at all while you were at the Rockingham location that afternoon after you came back at 5:15, if you recall?
I may have had conversation with him.
And where would that conversation have taken place?
Probably in the house, upstairs in the master bath area.
Now, you and I had some discussions regarding a green piece of paper inside a bag that contained Mr. Goldman's clothes. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Hold on, let me toss the Goldman's up. All right, Mr. Cochran.
Thank you. And prior to my asking you questions about that green piece of paper, had you ever seen that before?
No.
And did you not tell us that the items in that green paper bag were recovered by officers Tippin and Carr. You tell us that, Mr. Goldman's residence?
I don't recall
Officers Tippin and Carr. Okay.
if I did. If I did tell you that, then I misspoke.
Well, maybe I can read it to you, that if you said that, if you said the clothes were... Yes.
The day before yesterday.
He has it on his computer, and I think I can get it on his computer.
We all have it on our computer. I don't think it's on the note yet.
I'm missing Dutch twice again.
This is from his computer. Let me ask you this question.
Well, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you. You recall being asked, this is the day before yesterday, this question by me and giving this response. Question at line 26. How were these clothes recovered, and what is the connection of the bag with the clothes? Answer, once again, they were recovered by detectives Tippin and Carr. You remember so testifying?
I may have.
You went on to say, I wasn't there, I couldn't answer that question, but it was booked in the Vaughn's Pavilion bag along with this envelope. Is that correct? Answer, apparently. Remember so testifying?
Apparently.
All right, now, is that what happened?
No. Pardon?
Is that what happened?
No, those clothes were recovered by the Goldman family.
So you want to change your testimony under oath?
If I stated that, then I misspoke.
You misspoke?
That's correct.
So Tippin and Carr didn't recover them?
Did not. The clothing was recovered by the Goldman family.
And when you were testifying the other day, when you were under oath, you were trying to be as accurate as you could, were you not?
I always try to be as accurate as I can.
I'm not what you always do. The other day when you
The
testified.
other day, today, always.
All right. But you were wrong, right?
Apparently I was.
And you spell out for us the other day that you do make mistakes. Isn't
Really just want to see these two duke it out at this point. Just duke it out.
that correct?
Just like everyone else, I certainly
Well,
do.
we're not talking about everybody else right now. We're talking about you. You make mistakes. Is that right?
Do you think if I asked GTP to make me a video of these two duking it out, it would? Be right back.
I certainly do.
Overruled.
You make mistakes. Is that correct?
Mr. Cochran, I make mistakes.
All right.
Yes.
And with regard to these theories that you expounded yesterday, you will agree with me, will you not, that with regard to what happened on June 12th in the late evening hours, ultimately must be decided by this jury and not by your theory. Isn't that a fair statement?
That's argumentative.
Well, see if I can restate it. All right. You will agree with me, will you not, that as to the facts of this particular case, that has to be determined. No. I'm
Go
going
ahead.
to finish the question.
Finish the question.
Right. You will agree with me, will you not, that as to the facts of this particular case, the facts in this case must be determined by the jury. It's not the exact same question.
Oral. Yes or no?
Yes.
A truism.
Right. Absolutely a truism. Now, well, I'm not asking for opinion, Your Honor.
Well, you got mine. Let's move on.
I've got yours. Right. I have to deal with yours, but not hers. Thank you. Now, with regard to your theories, you've been wrong and mistaken in this case before. Isn't that correct? You made mistakes in this case?
There were mistakes made.
Well, I know there were mistakes made, but did you make any mistakes?
I believe you just pointed one out in my testimony.
Well, there are others, aren't there? What about, let me just ask you this regarding mistakes. The blood on Miss Nicole Simpson's back, you saw that at the scene, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
That blood was not preserved. Is that correct?
That's correct. The coroner did not preserve that blood.
So that was the coroner's mistake, not yours?
I'm not pointing fingers as to whose mistake. I think that was a communication.
Chat GPT will not, GPT will not make me a video of these two duking it out. And my heart is broken. I just wanted that so badly. And it would have been epic and it would have been great. And and he said no, which he rarely ever says no to me. He gives me everything I want, literally.
Problem, certainly at the very least.
Well, as the investigator in this case, if that was possibly important evidence that may have led to the exclusion of Mr. Simpson, do you think that it would have been good to communicate that to the coroner's office so that would have been maintained and preserved and tested? He's talked about communication, Your Honor.
Cole, you can answer the question.
That was communicated to the coroner's office,
And who'd you communicate that to?
to the coroner's investigator at the scene.
And you communicated, they both were speaking English, is that correct?
Yes, we were.
And then you found out sometime later that those results, so the blood had not been tested or examined or collected, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Did you talk to the person you spoke to about that
Yes,
afterwards?
yes.
And what's that person's name?
I believe it's Mahaney.
Mahaney, is that a criminalist at the coroner's office?
Yes.
So it was Mahaney's fault?
I'm not saying whose fault it was.
All right. What about the failure to preserve the stomach contents of Mr. Gold Brown Simpson? Whose fault was that was thrown out?
I don't know that it was anyone's fault. I do know I'm not in charge of stomach contents or what occurs at the coroner's office.
Well, now, let's see. As an experienced investigator, and you know the importance of stomach contents from a standpoint of trying to determine, as a factor in determining the time of death of an individual, and you're there at the autopsy, wouldn't you suggest to the coroners that it would be a good idea to save these stomach contents? Wouldn't you do that?
I would never.
She's testifying here.
Look, I'm a server, and I've been a server for a long time when I wasn't coding. And I cook at home. I make a lot of dinner. I used to. Once I started YouTube, that went downhill real quick. But that's okay. They're adults. But I would never go back to the kitchen. Okay, here's what happened the other day at work. We had this delicious roast beef that he made. And then he cut it with the grain. So when I served it, it was rubbery. He took delicious French dips and made them into rubbery. And everybody knows, if you would have just, oh gosh, if you would have just sliced that, the other way, it would have been delicious. But I would never, even though I know what he did wrong, even though I know it would help him, walk into the kitchen and say, this is, you got to slice it this way, dude. That's not my job. It's just not. This is not his job. It is not his job to go to the coroner and tell the coroner what to do with that body or not. It's just not his job.
No,
You may answer. You wouldn't suggest that?
that's their call.
All right. You never suggested that in this case.
I don't recall ever suggesting the coroner to maintain any stomach contents in any case.
Now, you were present when Dr. Golden was doing this autopsy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you understand any logic at all in preserving and saving the stomach contents of Mr. Goldman while not preserving and saving the stomach contents of Nicole Brown Simpson?
Overruled.
I see logic in examining both contents.
I can't not because I feel guilty. I feel like I'm ignoring him. I feel like I'm ignoring him if I don't talk to him at least once a day.
And that was done. As far as their policies on preserving stomach contents, I'm not familiar with it. I don't know how long they do that or under what circumstances. I just don't know.
Well, now, you've attended more than 250 autopsies in your long career. Isn't that correct?
No, I don't think so. It's probably more like 150.
So 150 autopsies. And in those cases where time of death is at question, isn't it accepted in the community of investigators and criminalists that the stomach contents are one important factor in helping us determine the time of death, sir?
Overruled.
Yes or no? It may be, it may not be. It's one factor, and it's not an exact factor in determining death,
Right.
the time of death.
But in this case, it was thrown away, so we don't have it at all. And that's the point. Isn't that a mistake?
I can't say what's a mistake. I know that it was examined, and to me, it would be much more important to examine those contents and make a determination just how full a stomach was.
And who
As far as
examined?
retaining those contents,
Apparently they got in trouble because like the ChatGPT was too nice and agreed too much. So they have to make him a little meaner and disagree with us sometimes so we don't get attached.
again, I don't know what their policies are.
If the coroner's office admits that's a mistake, would you agree that's a mistake since it's their field?
Sustained.
Now, talking about other mistakes, with regard to your report, which indicated that you booked 2 dimes and 2 pennies, do you recall that?
Correct.
And in fact, you told us on the stand here you only booked 1 dime and 1 penny. Is that right?
I didn't book either. They were booked by the criminalists. I inadvertently wrote down 2 dimes and 2 pennies when in effect it was only 1 dime and 1 penny.
Is that a mistake?
I'd certainly call it a mistake, yes.
When you told us under oath that you had seen
Barely a
blood spots
mistake.
on the rear gate at Bundy, yet no photographs were taken of those blood spots on June 13th, 1994. Would you consider that a mistake?
Don't you guys remember? I played a video not too long ago where the attorney, pro se, used ChatGPT to try to win his case. He lost miserably. Just type it in.
That, again, was probably a problem with communications. At a crime scene, the criminalists, the print people, the photographers, the other detectives are all given assignments. The detective in charge, while responsible for their overall performance, can't follow each technician around and make sure that they do every little thing that they ask of them. So you assign out jobs, and that particular assignment came out of the purview of the criminalist. Unfortunately, it was not done.
Now I can get back to my question. Was that a mistake that wasn't done? That's the question.
Was it a mistake of mine?
I didn't ask whose mistake. I said, was that a mistake, Detective Lang?
I would call that a mistake, a
All right.
problem with the communications.
In fact, there were photographs taken of some spot on the front gate. Isn't that correct? Which we saw yesterday. Number 116?
I believe so.
All right, but they weren't taken of the rear gate, right?
That's correct.
Now, that was a mistake, but that was someone else's mistake. Isn't that correct?
You could categorize it as a mistake, yes.
Now, you'd agree with me, would you not, that since you are the lead investigator in charge at Bundy of this particular case, some of this falls on your shoulders also, does it not?
Certainly.
Now, by the way, the dime and the penny were found on the north side of the Jeep vehicle. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And you were asked some questions about tire track marks. You recall that yesterday?
Yes.
And Mrs. Clark showed you a photograph of that alleyway where it was asphalt or whatever, some kind of black substance. You recall seeing that?
Yes.
Now, the area, however, where the tire track marks were was not in the alleyway. That was a different kind of material behind the garage area of Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's residence. Is that correct?
There were tire tracks
All right.
on that area, yes.
And I want to show you 2 photographs in sequence. And ask you some questions about it. We're going to show the court please fence 1032 and fence 1033. And I want to ask you some questions about those so we can use the elbow. First of all, can you see we try to place them in juxtaposition to each other and sequentially They're on the Almo now too. Can you see what appear to be?
Sustained.
All right, we've placed them, the two photographs together. And do you see what appears to be tire tracks on those two photographs, 1032 and 1033?
Appears to be, yes.
All right.
In the
And you see
photo-
also where the coins from those two different photographs, which are LAPD photographs, right?
I'd say so, yes.
That those coins have been moved, they're in a different position.
They appear to be.
All right, did you ever, as the lead investigator at Bundy, do anything to try and check or to check out those tire track marks there?
I observed the tire tracks when I was there and formed an opinion.
I didn't ask you about that. I said, did you ever do anything? Did you call any experts out?
That was what I did.
You called an expert out?
No, I formed an opinion that an expert was not needed.
All right, so you made that judgment yourself, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And are you, in addition to being the homicide investigator, also a tire track expert also?
I know when tire tracks have been run over and over and over again, and that this is a very commonly used area back here for tires, and that you can't tell the age of a tire track, and then it would have been fruitless to go any further with it.
Did you ever talk to an expert about that?
I know of no expert in tire tracks. I know of criminalists and photographers who could have photographed this, but aside from that,
Did you talk to them at all?
no.
All right, so-
Regarding the tire tracks, no.
Yes. What you did, you made a visual observation and you've given us your opinion now that there's no relevance in this particular evidence. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're telling us, sir?
This is a driveway that's very common to see tire tracks transpose over
I'm
one
asking
another.
you whether there's
That's my
relevance
opinion.
in this evidence,
Wait,
Your Honor.
wait. Mr. Cochran, let the witness answer before you start asking the next question.
All right, I was trying to get the question, Your Honor. Sorry.
My opinion,
Hold on. One at a time.
All right, let me ask you again. You looked at these tire tracks depicted on 1032 and 1033. You made a decision that you didn't need to talk to any further expert about this. You gave us your own opinion in that regard. Is that correct, sir?
yes.
All right. And by the way, could these photographs show different dimes and pennies?
Could they show different?
Yes. Are those different dimes and pennies or are those the same, if you know?
They're in a different position, so I can't say for sure.
You told us you only booked one dime and one penny, right?
The criminalist booked one dime and one penny.
Right. But what did you see out there that night?
My recollection is one dime and one penny.
But you wrote two dimes and two pennies. Is that right?
Oh.
I wrote two dimes and two pennies
Good.
correctly. I observed one dime and one penny in the driveway.
Can you tell us, in looking at the monitor, whether or not there are tread marks under these coins?
I can't see under the coins.
And could you tell whether or not there were tread marks over the top of the coins?
Doesn't appear to me to be.
And you did it with your naked eye, did you?
I observed the coins with my naked eye, yes.
All right, these photographs that we're looking at, 1032 and 1033, were taken while you were there or at some later time, if you know?
I would say the top one was probably taken while I was not there. As far as the bottom one, it's hard to say.
You don't recall?
Well, I was doing a lot of things in a lot of other places.
Do you
and
recall, is the question.
I do not specifically recall that bottom photograph being taken, no.
And with regard, however, to the material with regard to the tire tracks, when you were talking yesterday about asphalt, this is not asphalt back there, is it?
No, that appears to be cement.
Some kind of cement, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, you were asked yesterday some questions about your taking evidence and holding it someplace and not booking it for a period of time. Again, your LAPD manual, which you use as a guide, directs you to book evidence as soon as possible. Isn't that correct?
Generally, yes.
And
And the
where
person
in
with
your
glasses.
in the manual does it say that you can take an item like the plastic heart and put it at robbery homicide for 7 weeks? Is there a particular section that tells you can do that?
I don't know of any section
Because there is no section that says that, is there?
that says that I can keep a plastic heart.
Well, it says you can keep any item of evidence for 7 weeks without booking it into evidence in this case.
There's nothing to say that I can't.
In other words, you could take every piece of evidence in this case and hold on to it for 7 weeks if you want, in a manual that says you should book evidence as soon as possible. Is that what you're telling us?
think it's a common sense call. Certainly, I wouldn't keep every bit of evidence in this case. The evidence in this case was collected by a criminalist who booked it.
We're talking about evidence. Let's talk about the plastic heart that was not booked until well into August. It was taken on or about June 13th, 1994. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in that instance, and we're talking about common sense and the manual, that instance, you would not hold evidence out generally for that long. Isn't that a fair statement?
There would be a purpose that I would hold any evidence out. Certainly, the evidence collected at the crime scene, save that plastic heart, would not have been held out by me, and then indeed was collected and booked by the criminalist.
Well, what about the evidence that you talked about yesterday that was taken on the 13th but not booked to the 15th? What happened over the 14th, if you know?
What evidence would that be?
Well, you talked about evidence yesterday that Ms. Clark was asking you questions, you remembered, that was seized on the 13th, that showed a date of being booked on the 15th, I thought.
That's correct. That is the actual date that it was physically booked into the property division.
My question was, what happened on the 14th, which was the day in between, sir?
On the 14th, I believe the criminalist who had possession of that evidence was busy doing other things on this case.
Did the criminalist tell you that?
Did he tell me
Were
he
you
was?
told that?
I am aware that he was.
Or is that your speculation that they were doing other
No.
things? Do you know the reason it was not
That's
booked on the
your
14th, sir?
The reason, in my mind, was the fact that this criminalist was doing other things, and I believe at that date working on the Bronco. There's
And
also dozens and dozens of pieces of evidence that have to be categorized, written up, measured. Reports have to be prepared before this is actually physically booked into evidence.
were you told that by the criminalist is my question.
Was I told
Did
what?
the criminalist tell you they were busy on the 14th? And that's why they didn't book the evidence till the 15th?
No,
All right, that's just your opinion you just gave us.
that's my information. I was aware that he was doing other things.
All right, now what about these Caucasian hairs on the gloves that we talked about? You indicated there were Caucasian hairs on both gloves, is that correct?
I believe you indicated that.
Well, I ask you if you didn't know that as the lead investigator in this case,
I'm aware that there were Caucasian hairs.
on both gloves, is that correct? Have any tests been done?
Objection, counsel's not allowing the witness to answer.
I thought he was finished.
Proceed.
Are you aware of any tests that have been done on these Caucasian hairs that were on the gloves?
I believe there have been.
Counsel asked the question. Can I ask the question? Look at the last. Is putting the timestamp on?
Nope. Are you aware of any tests that have been done on these Caucasian hairs that were on the gloves?
That's the question.
Oh, that. Can we approach her?
Yes. All right, thank you, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Detective Lang, do you recall whether or not there were Caucasian hairs found? Let's take first the glove on Rockingham.
I believe my information was that there was in fact a Caucasian hair in that glove.
And were any tests conducted, hairs that may or may not have been on the Bundy glove?
No.
Your same answer as before?
Yes.
Now, did I understand your testimony yesterday to indicate that you had someone bring you the glove that was allegedly found at Rockingham over to you at Bundy? Did you so testify yesterday?
The glove was already at Bundy because that's where the criminalist had just come from. So he came to Bundy, and at that time I requested to take a look at the glove.
Had you asked to have that glove brought over?
No, it was brought over with the criminalist after he concluded his investigation at Rockingham.
And so we're clear about the criminalist. What criminalist are we talking about?
Mr. Fung,
And how did he bring it over, if you know?
he drove over in his truck.
And well, other than by the truck, did where was the glove when you first saw it?
In a brown paper bag.
And was anything else in that bag?
I don't recall seeing anything else in the bag.
And you told us yesterday how you examined this particular glove. Do you recall that?
No, I believe I just said that I looked at it briefly, and then we went over to the truck, and I examined it further at the rear of his truck.
All right, let's go back. Where were you when you first saw the glove that allegedly had come from Rockingham? Where were you in relation to the Bundy location?
I was at the rear of the criminalist van.
And what time was this?
Yeah, I could only estimate.
Your best estimate. What time was it?
I mean, perhaps 10:30, 10:45, 10:20. I don't know.
All right, and you saw it. Fung had it in his hands at that point. Is that right?
No,
Where was it?
it was in a brown paper bag.
All right.
He
Well, I'm
brought
asking,
it over to me at the scene and said he had it and suggested that we go to the truck to look at it, which we did.
the question was, did Fung have the paper bag in his hand at that time?
That's my recollection.
All right, that's what I'm asking you. And then at that point, did you visually look inside the bag?
Again, I don't believe I did at that point. We walked to the truck, and that's when I looked inside the bag.
All right. And when you walked inside the truck, who was present inside that truck when you looked inside this bag?
Okay, we were at the rear of the truck. Fung opened the bag and showed me the glove.
Can you answer my question? Who was present inside the truck at the time you looked inside the bag?
Fung and myself.
Just the two of you?
That's my recollection.
All right. And of course, you've written all this down in your report. You wrote this down in your report, did you not?
I wrote what down?
The fact that you saw the glove, the back of the criminalist truck, along with you and Fung. You wrote that in some report,
No.
didn't you?
No.
I can't hear you.
No,
That's not written anywhere in any of your reports, is it?
I would have had no reason to write that down.
The answer is that written anywhere in any of your reports, Detective?
My answer is, Mr. Cochran, no.
All right. And you have never before yesterday ever testified about that. Isn't that right?
If I haven't been asked about it, I certainly wouldn't testify about it.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever before yesterday afternoon ever testify about looking at the glove allegedly taken from Rockingham at the Bundy scene along with Mr. Funk? You ever testified to that before?
I've never been asked
All
that.
right. There's never been any of your reports. Is that correct?
There would have been no reason to put it in any report.
The answer is no.
It's correct.
Now, so when you then looked inside the bag, inside the truck where you and Fung were, did you have occasion to touch the glove at that point?
I did not.
Did you take the glove out?
No,
And did you ever do anything with regard to the other glove, the so-called Bundy glove? Did you bring it over and look at it?
I didn't touch it.
You never touched it at all that day?
The Bundy
The
glove,
Bundy glove.
I don't recall touching it at all.
By the way, with regard to this evidence that was moved that you were talking about yesterday, and you told us how these bodies were in close proximity, did you see the evidence moved as the bodies were moved? And by the evidence, I mean the cap, the glove, and that envelope. Did you see that evidence moved?
No,
I'm asking you this examination. Did you see evidence moved in this case?
I didn't physically see it, no.
But when I was originally with you on cross-examination, I showed you those photographs. You acknowledged the evidence had been moved. Isn't that correct?
It was obvious to me it had.
And that's the first time ever, in this case, you ever became aware that the evidence had been moved. Is that right?
When you showed me those?
Yes.
No,
You knew it before that?
I observed the photos prior to that, yes.
All right. And did you go and write a report about that, detailing how and when that evidence had been moved?
I wouldn't have known how and when.
You may answer.
No,
You've never written such a report, have you?
No.
And with regard to things like the ice cream, you never bothered to test the melting rate of ice cream until I started asking you questions. Isn't that correct about that?
until you made it an issue, that's correct. It was of no evidentiary value to me at all.
Well, as the investigator, again, if you made one of your mistakes that you make on occasion, perhaps we call it to your attention. And now you're now testing ice cream. Is that correct?
It's argumentative. It's also badgering the witness at this point.
With regard, let me rephrase it, Your Honor.
Please.
With regard to the ice cream, the first time that you ever did any tests regarding the ice cream was after we started talking about it here in court. Is that correct, sir?
After you made it an issue, that's correct.
And so the answer is yes?
Yes.
All right. And with regard to, let's talk about the ice cream. Yesterday, in response to one of Ms. Clark's questions, you indicated that about seeing some substance in the ice cream. Do you recall that?
Some substance
Yes. You remember you said something about seeing something inside the ice cream.
that
or
appeared
the
to
ice-
be,
Hold on. Detective, let him finish asking the question before you start answering, please.
okay.
Do you remember so testifying about seeing something in the ice cream after it had melted, sir?
I remember saying I believe there was something lumpy.
And do you recall being asked questions about that earlier, about the ice cream in my examination? When I asked you some questions about that.
Yes.
Do you recall being asked this series of questions and giving these answers? Counsel, it's at page 15369 and 15370. They printed out of the trial transcript. Tell us what you saw when you went in through that door, sir, went upstairs. Answer, I entered up the stairs, and to the left was a banister, which I observed a Ben & Jerry's ice cream cup. It was pointed out to me by Detective Phillips. To me, it appeared to be melted or melting. I asked Detective Phillips if that had been observed earlier. He stated, there's an objection by Ms. Clark. He gave you some information about the observations of the first officer on the scene. Answer, yes. Question, did you observe what kind of ice cream that was? Answer, no. Remember so testifying in Ms. Clark's direct examination that you didn't observe what kind of ice cream that was at that time? Remember so testifying?
Yes.
Now, yesterday, when you were asked, you told us that you thought it might have a lumpy area in the center. Is that correct?
I believe I was asked if it had something like that. Yes.
You didn't tell us about that before, did you?
I believe I was asked about that before.
Now, with
Overruled.
Now, with regard to your investigation into the ice cream and the type of ice cream, when did you start that investigation?
As to the melting rate, I believe it was last week, perhaps the week before.
The week before, meaning, let's look at the calendar. Which week are we talking about? The week of February the 20th, sir?
I believe it might have, in fact, I believe it might have occurred on the, yes, I believe it was that week, 20, 21, 22.
In that area?
I believe so. I could be mistaken.
And in the course of your investigation, have you talked to a young lady by the name of Berman at all?
Have I?
Yes. Have you or anyone in your direction, sir?
I believe someone may have. I didn't.
I mean, in the course of this investigation, it started sometime the week of the 20th, I'm talking about now.
In regards to the ice cream,
Yes, sir.
I have not since then, no.
You've not since then?
No.
Who else have you talked to in the course of your investigation?
I spoke with the Brown family and the children through the Brown family.
All right, anyone else?
Detective Payne, who I requested to conduct this examination.
And examination, when you say, you mean investigation?
As to the ice cream, the examination of the melting rate of chocolate chip cookie dough.
So you had him go out and buy some chocolate chip cookie dough and then try to see how long it took to melt? Is that what you did?
Essentially, that's what we did, yes.
Were you present when Detective Payne did this?
No.
Were you able to ascertain how many members of the Brown family on that particular night purchased ice cream?
I was told how many purchased ice cream.
You were told that by the Brown family?
That's correct.
Brown family.
I'm sorry.
The Brown family?
Do we have any Brown family members present in the quorum?
All right.
Proceed.
All right. In regard to Detective Payne, just a second here.
Delayed game, 15
regard
yard
to
penalty.
Detective Payne, has he given you a report of his findings regarding the ice cream?
I have photographs.
And in those photographs, are they taken in a sequential fashion so that you are able to determine how long this particular ice cream would take to melt? Is that right?
Yes, in 5-minute increments.
All right. And you found out that that particular ice cream would melt in a little more than an hour. Isn't that right?
Approximately an hour and 15 minutes under those conditions.
So if that ice cream was solid at 11 o'clock, someone was eating at 11 o'clock, you would expect that it would be melted then by about 12:15 or thereafter. Is that correct? Or in a melting state?
Not if it had been placed in a freezer.
Well, I didn't ask you that. I asked you whether if the ice cream was eaten by somebody at 11 o'clock and it was seen an hour and 15 minutes after that, you would expect it would be melted. Isn't that right? Under your test? I'm asking.
Sustain.
Basis, Your Honor?
Foundation.
All right.
Speculation.
Okay. Now, with regard then to this ice cream, you're able to find out that this ice cream would melt in about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, testing it in 5-minute intervals. Is that right?
Under the conditions that we had, yes.
Now, if Risky found the ice cream still melting at 12:40 a.m., and you extrapolate backwards, would that mean that the person may have been eating that ice cream as late as 11:15, 11:30?
I couldn't say.
All right. Well, you have this test from Detective Payne, don't you?
Well, I have this test, but this test isn't the definitive answer as to melting ice cream. If you had placed this ice cream in the freezer and refroze the ice cream, it would change everything.
Well, do you think someone placed this ice cream in the freezer when
This is why I'm not screaming at the screen today. CJ's distracting me.
when you know, in fact, that the ice cream was found on the banister where it was when you found it, sir?
I don't know when it was last frozen. It may have been placed in the ice cream prior. I don't know.
I see, sir. All right. At any rate, your investigation on the ice cream continues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're doing other investigations also. Isn't that correct? That continues, that you've started after this trial. Isn't that correct?
We get information on a daily basis, and we conduct this investigation.
Like how? How though? I mean, there's a crime scene. There's evidence that they use all the time, like rigor, things like that. Why are they spending weeks and weeks and weeks on this ice cream? It does just that. And the thing that really, really doesn't make sense about this, thing that really gets me going is the nation is watching this happen. Is no one in the nation like saying, why the hell are you doing this weeks and weeks and weeks ago? I mean, this happened. No one must have complained about it because he just keeps going on and on and on. Like this is gonna, Perry Mason, and it did. I guess it did. I don't know.
On a daily basis, everything is ongoing.
Do you ever investigate any clues that lead away from Mr. Simpson? Have you done that?
Yes.
All right. What clues have you conducted? We have just a moment, Your Honor. Maybe approach for a second.
Sure.
I'm gonna go get ice cream and see if I can make it back before the sidebar's over.
Detective Lang, why don't we come back to the clues and what you pursued after lunch, if you don't mind. Let me ask you some questions about your theory about this not being a drug-related homicide. You ever heard of something called a Colombian necklace?
I believe so.
And it's true, is it not, that a Colombian necklace is a situation where drug dealers will slice the neck of a victim, including the carotid artery, in order to kill the victims and to instill fear and send a message to others who have not either paid for their drugs or have been informing to the police. Isn't that what a Colombian necklace is?
I've heard that.
And sir, isn't it true that you, in your experience, know about drug killings where knives have been used? Isn't that correct?
I do have knowledge of knives being used, yes.
And sir, in this connection, you are aware, are you not, that Faye Resnick became a resident at Nicole Brown Simpson's place at 875 South Bundy on or about June 3rd, 1994. Isn't that correct?
No, I'm not.
All right, your superficial investigation didn't reveal that?
Initially, the investigation revealed she may have been. I've since received information that she was not a resident at that location. And that is on.
This is how I'm going to prove ice cream doesn't melt. This will not melt. It just won't.
Ongoing.
You're still looking at that?
Yes, we are.
All right, well, in the course of your investigation, have you learned that she moved in with Miss Simpson on or about June 3rd, 1994, and stayed there until June, may I finish the question?
Finish the question.
And stayed there until June 8th, 1994, at which time she went into drug rehabilitation?
Sustain.
All right. Does your investigation reveal that Faye Resnick went into drug rehabilitation on or about June 8th, 1994, and that she was living at Nicole Brown Simpson's?
Sustain.
I'm asking this investigation, Your Honor.
Counsel, it's a compound question.
All right. Let me restate it then, Your Honor.
All right.
In the course of your investigation, did you learn that?
Wait. That assumes that something is a fact. Did you consider, when he formed his opinion, did you ever consider
All right,
these three factors?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And it's only on the basis of forming an opinion,
Opinion.
not
Thank you.
assuming it to be true.
Thank you. In the course of your forming your opinion,
They will, as soon as I hear what the question is.
in the course of your investigation in this matter, and your determination that this was not a drug killing, did you consider the fact that Faye Resnick went into a drug rehabilitation facility on or about June 8th, 1994?
Overrule.
Consider that fact?
I have been told that she had.
The question is now, not what you've been told, sir. Did you consider that fact when you came to this conclusion you told us about yesterday?
When I came to that conclusion I told you about yesterday, I didn't have that knowledge.
All right. So there are other facts that are coming into your knowledge even as we speak in this case. Is that correct?
Every day.
All right. Now, if, and I want to ask this as it relates to your opinion, if Faye Resnick was freebasing cocaine on a daily basis at the Bundy location, so much so that she had to have a drug intervention by June 8th of 1994, and you learn that to be a fact, would that change your opinion about this possibly being a drug related killing?
If I had that information, that would probably be a consideration if I had no other direction to go.
All right. And if you found out that as she used this cocaine and was freebasing on a daily basis, she had no job by which to pay for these drugs, would that be a factor that might bear upon the opinion you gave us yesterday?
No, it wouldn't, because all the evidence pointed in a different direction, which he said. All right. I gotta go now too. I have 5 minutes to get my computer set up to record some court. I might have to take a break from the Texas A&M and play normal court clips because I don't know if everybody's gonna be able to handle the whole thing at once. I wish I could just keep playing it, but I think everybody's gonna need a break in between with some regular clips. I'm not sure, but I better get some ready just in case. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. I shall see you again as soon as American Court stream is over. Not as soon as, at some point after he finishes his first stream, but before his second stream, we're going to finally get the verdict of this divorce case. And it's a nail biter. It's so good. All right, guys. See you later. Thank you.